Welcome, beautiful people to Camp Koji. My name is Joel. Thank you for joining me as I break down the biggest gaming news from the week that was on the only podcast you will ever need. On today's show, it's going to be all about the 2024 Game Awards nominations. I do this show once a year. We're just going to go through every nominee that was put forward last week. But I want to quickly go over two things before we get there. The first being a pretty story, which is about PlayStation. So last week, Reuters reported that Sony had expressed intent to purchase From Software's parent company, Kadokawa Corporation. Kadokawa then confirmed that Sony has indeed sent a letter of intent to acquire its shares. Kadokawa owns a majority share in From Software as well as several anime production houses. They also own a company called Dowango, a Japanese telecoms and media company that owns developer Spike Chunsoft, which most of you might know very recently. They developed Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Earlier this year, Kadokawa also bought Acquire, who recently worked on Mario and Luigi Brothership. I believe before that, I think they worked on Octopath Traveler 1 and 2. Kadokawa does own 69.66% of From Software. Tencent owns 16.25%, and Sony owns 14.09%. If the purchase goes through, that would mean Sony theoretically would own 83.75% of From Software. So this is a pretty big news story that happened last week. There were a lot of reactions to it. But I think surface level, we kind of have to acknowledge the reality of this situation, which is that even though a lot of gaming sites and creators and stuff like that, we're talking about From Software, that actually isn't the big piece here. I think the acquisition of From Software is like this very fortuitous byproduct from purchasing Kadokawa, because that's really what Sony is aiming for. Remember, this isn't PlayStation buying this company, this is Sony. And this just seems to be a continued pursuit from Sony in growing their media arm, specifically in anime and manga in Japan. We know very recently, over the last few years, Sony has been buying up a lot of distributors, especially distributors here in the United States, with Funimation, and then rolling that into their purchase of Crunchyroll. So I'm not super well versed in the world of manga and anime. There are, from the research that I was able to do, there were some people that were saying that this isn't as big of a deal as it does seem on paper. Like, it sort of does feel like, holy crap, like PlayStation seems to be pursuing this monopoly of anime and manga media. But apparently in Japan, just that sector is so huge and so varied that would be almost impossible, from what I've been able to, from the data that I've been able to gather and sort of read up on. But that kind of seems to be what's happening here. There are other rumors that Kadokawa had actually approached Sony to see if they would purchase their shares, because there is apparently some fear internally that there might be a hostile takeover from another entity. I don't remember the name of that group. I don't have it written in my notes. All of this is really interesting. To me, on the surface, this sounds like something that I kind of don't see a reason why this wouldn't go through at this stage, especially with the rumors about Kadokawa desiring for something like this to happen. I think the negotiations now get a little bit tricky now that this deal has leaked. Usually when these types of deals leak, it's usually the terms set to scale a lot more favorably to the seller more than the buyer. So the price for Sony probably just went, actually not probably, but it did go up, because Kadokawa's shares kind of exploded when this news was put out there. But yeah, there's a part of me that feels like there kind of doesn't feel like a reason why this would not happen, to be honest. And like I said, a lot of people are saying like, they're trying to compare this to Xbox and Activision Blizzard, and they're trying to say, well, Xbox opened the door to acquisition, so no one can be angry if PlayStation goes out there and does this. But like I said, PlayStation is not doing this From Software. It's just a very good byproduct of them actually purchasing Kadokawa. And it's also very, very different. But I approached this a similar manner to what I did with when we first heard about Xbox buying Activision Blizzard, which is I don't see it as a monopoly, right? And this is definitely nowhere near a monopoly, in my opinion, with PlayStation picking up this corporation. But at the same time, do I want this to happen? No, I don't want it to happen. I think anytime you have a parent company gain majority shares and then theoretically gain control over a developer or publisher, it's more times than not is not a good thing. It's never a good thing for something like that to happen. And historically, we've seen that, and even just talking about PlayStation, we've seen it. You know, I look at a company like Insomniac, where, you know, after that leak that happened, we find out that Insomniac has essentially been turned into a Marvel machine, and that to me means that the money is leading the desire. You know, it's not about like, hey, we want to do this or do that, or maybe something new. It's like, no, Spider-Man's been successful. Let's do Spider-Man 3. Let's make a Venom game. Let's do X-Men. Let's do Wolverine. And I feel like you're taking this objectively creative team and sort of pigeonholing them into a single IP umbrella, which I don't think is the most creative endeavor to go down. So whenever something like that happens, it's never a great thing, right? So if From Software wants to do a sequel to Armored Core or another Armored Core, PlayStation now has the power to say, no, you know what, we should do an Elden Ring sequel, or no, it's time for us to finally do Bloodborne 2. You know, they have the power to do that. So it's like your creativity now kind of has a ceiling on it. You know, someone's putting a lid on that jar. And the same goes for this fear now with PlayStation going to From Software and saying, hey, can you do something live service? I think that's something that everyone should be concerned about. And a lot of these core From Software fans are also not happy because they understand that when you're taken over by a corporation, that might happen. And you know, just to move on, because I almost spent too much time on this, there's also this fear about PlayStation exclusivity, and I actually don't think that will happen. So if this goes through, which kind of looks very likely that it would, a few things. Number one, they wouldn't own From Software 100% unless they convince Tencent to own to sell their shares, which I think that would take a lot of money for them to do. I don't think Tencent wants to let go of From Software, especially because the company is getting bigger and better. And, you know, the very successful release of Elden Ring. So they won't have 100% control of the company, and it would just not be in the best interest of From Software. It would not be in the best interest of their shareholders like Tencent to all of a sudden pigeonhole their games onto just PlayStation. Doesn't make any sense. So I think at the most what would happen is that it would definitely be launching PS5 and PC. I could see that continuing day one releases for From Software, but I wouldn't rule out a staggered release onto Xbox. But I can tell you, I'm 100% certain that these games would not fully skip Xbox if, you know, Xbox continues to be Xbox. I mean, we kind of don't know where that company is going. But I don't think that PlayStation buys this and then cuts them off from the potential of the next Switch or another Xbox or anything like that. I think they would probably at the most go for a staggered release. It just wouldn't be in the benefit of kind of anyone, honestly, at this point to do something like that. But we'll have to wait and see. I'll talk about it again if the acquisition goes through. Next story, before we get to the Game Award nominations, I just wanted to acknowledge the winners of the Golden Joystick Awards. I think this is like, you know, the Golden Joystick, I think this might be the first time I'm discussing it on the podcast, but this thing has been going on for over 40 years. I honestly didn't know. And I think one of the reasons why I don't pay close attention to it is because this is 100% fan voted. And I like that. I think it's really dope to have an award show that is 100% fan voted. But then you also have to simultaneously understand that I'm not trying to say that anyone that wins these awards, like the award doesn't count, but I feel like it doesn't count as much as if you had a panel of of judges, just because they're, I'm not gonna say like I don't want to go as far as say manipulation, but there is a kind of a bit of manipulation involved here in terms of like whoever has the biggest base kind of has a greater chance of winning. But I think a lot of these awards to me made sense. Best storytelling went to FF7 Rebirth. Best visual design, Black Myth Wukong. Multiplayer was won by Helldivers 2. Audio design was Astrobot. Game expansion, which they do have a game expansion category. We're going to talk about that a lot in the next segment. Went to, no surprise, Shadow of the Erd Tree. Best indie game that was self-published, Another Crab's Treasure. Best indie game went to Balatro. Studio of the Year went to Team Asobi. Best soundtrack was FF7 Rebirth. Best game trailer was Helldivers 2. Best early access game was Lethal Company. Still playing award on mobile was Honkai Star Rail. The PC and console version went to Minecraft. Streamer's choice was Chained Together, which was a pretty cool game. Breakthrough award went to Balatro. Best gaming hardware, Steam Deck OLED. Best game adaptation, Fallout. Best supporting performer, Brianna White as Aerith. Best lead performer, Cody Christian, who played Cloud in FF7 Rebirth. PC Game of the Year was Satisfactory. Console went to Helldivers 2. Critics' Choice also went to Helldivers 2. Most Wanted Game, no-brainer here, went to Grand Theft Auto 6. And then Ultimate Game of the Year went to Black Myth Wukong, which is, once again, no surprise because that game has sold, like over 15 million copies, some crazy number. And they have the country of China behind them. So kind of no surprise that they won that popular vote. But it was also cool to see Helldivers 2 get a lot of love. It really shows that they have a really dedicated fan base over there. I think that they confirmed that there are over 15 million unique players on Helldivers 2, which is phenomenal. It's a game that I've consistently have been talking about picking up. I haven't gotten it yet. But I've been thinking about it a lot to pick it up and give it a try. But it's good to see it getting its due because I feel like it didn't get that many Game Awards nominations, but it was a pretty phenomenal game. And it's also just really interesting to see it win Console Game of the Year, Multiplayer Game of the Year from PlayStation. In the same year, they also released a video game that was forced to shut down within 12 days. It's kind of crazy to see something like that. Now let's move on to the 2024 Game Awards nominations. We're going to go through these. I'm going to talk about who I think might win, who I want to win. This is going to be interesting because I feel like looking through a lot of nominations, I think this might be my worst year, my worst prediction year, because there's a lot of these categories where I kind of say to myself, I kind of don't understand, or I really don't know who's going to win. I think a lot of them are going to be some really, really good challenges. So before we go through this list, Player's Choice does open December 2nd. So we don't know those nominations yet, but Baldur's Gate 3 did win last year. And then 2 awards were actually eliminated this year, so there's less trophies this year than last year. The 2 trophies that no longer exist is Best Esports Event and Best Esports Coach. Both of those have been eliminated. All right, we're going to start off with Best Esports Game, Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, League of Legends, Mobile Legends Bang Bang, and Valorant. The winner from last year was Valorant. Look, a lot of these esports awards, I think especially when it comes to North America, I think a lot of us are going to kind of be lost in terms of like, I don't really even know who to vote for at this point or who I think is going to win. Personally, I think that the winner is going to be League of Legends. That's also who I would vote for. But it's kind of like a weird vote because it's like I don't really consume I don't consume esports right now, period. And I think at one point in time, I had said that these esports awards should kind of be done away with at the Game Awards, especially because a lot of times they just give them out rapid fire. But I will say this year, once I was thinking about it, I will acknowledge that the Game Awards is a global vote. And I think globally, esports is way more important than it is here in the United States. So I think that kind of changed my outlook a bit in terms of like completely eliminating this award, because I do think that there are a lot of countries out there that are excited to vote for these awards and look forward to finding out who the winners are. But I think here in North America, I think if you poll the majority of gamers, I think a lot of them would just guess one of these. Are they just going to pick their favorite game, like Valorant, for example? But I kind of, if I had to guess, I would put my money on League of Legends winning this year. Next up, we have Best Esports Team, Billy Gaming. They play League of Legends. Gen G also plays League of Legends. Navi, Counter-Strike. T1, League of Legends. Team Liquid, Dota 2. Last year's winner was JD Gaming. This is another one, complete guess from me. I kind of don't know. I'll go with T1, I guess. Best Esports Athlete, we have 33 Alexib, Chovy, Faker, Zywoo, and this person's name is written ZMJJKK. Now, I know that when Jeff Keighley did the live nominations, this person's name was different than it's spelled here. I don't remember exactly what that was. I just, last year's winner was Faker. I kind of can't imagine Faker not winning again because once again, if you look at this list, I think the majority of people that are going to vote, and remember, fan voting, I think it's a 10% weight, if I'm not mistaken. I think a lot of people are just going to pick Faker because Faker is the only name that a lot of us are going to be able to recognize from here. Content Creator of the Year. This is definitely one that I have not changed my mind on the same way with the esports one. This makes zero sense to be at the Game Awards. It should not be here kind of at all. What's great is that streamers now have their own award show. It's called the Streamer Awards. I think it's put on by, I think her name is Cutie Cinderella. She always puts on this show. I think it's actually really well produced. I think very recently, within the last week or two, they released their nominations. There's just no reason for there to be a Content Creator of the Year because a lot of times, to me, it just kind of doesn't fit. It doesn't make any sense. And if you're going to do this, to be honest, this should be something that should just be 100% fan voted, even if there might be some issues with weight. Maybe some of these personalities might have more weight in terms of their fandom. I think that's how you can generate a little bit of excitement to have each of these people on their streams kind of really encouraging people to vote because it will be 100% of the vote. Or maybe it should be more of a weight instead of just 10%. But the nominees are Queso, Elo Juan, Techno Gamers, Typical Gamer, Usada Pecora. Now, the only two names that I recognize here are Queso and Typical Gamer. Personally, I would vote for Queso. I have absolutely no idea who would win this because the winner is usually going to be the person probably with the most popularity, and I don't really know who kind of has the biggest numbers on here. Which is why, once again, I don't think that this should be a category. Last year's winner was Iron Mouse. The other issue with this is that I don't understand how this list is put together, and then Kai Cenat isn't on this list. Kai Cenat, it was not only one of the biggest streamers this year, but he also had some of the biggest gaming-focused streams this year. I remember he did a Red Dead marathon. He did a huge Elden Ring. I think he also did one for Sekiro that got a lot of views, got a lot of buzz, got a lot of people talking about the game, playing the game. Especially Elden Ring. I remember he had a segment where he kind of shouted out and gave flowers to other Elden Ring streamers and creators. So I just kind of don't and I think he also ran through Shadow of the Erdtree, if I'm not mistaken. So I kind of don't understand how he's not on this list, which is once again kind of lends itself to like there's no reason why this list should even exist at the Game Awards. Our next category is Best Adaptation, and this is Arcane Season 2, Fallout, Knuckles, Like a Dragon Yakuza, and Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft. Last year's winner was a no-brainer, which was Last of Us. This one's a little bit tougher. I don't understand why Knuckles is here, to tell you the truth. That was like one of those shows that dropped, and I think a lot of people were probably like, there was a Knuckles TV show. But maybe there wasn't anything else. I can't think of anything else that off the top of my head that maybe came out this year that probably could replace it because Borderlands definitely shouldn't be here, right? Like a Dragon Yakuza, apparently that show was not very good. So I in my opinion, this is a 1v1. This is between Arcane and Fallout. Arcane Season 1 did win in 2022. But I actually don't see it losing again here. So I think Arcane is going to be the winner. I would vote for Fallout because I haven't caught up to Arcane yet. I think season 2 is just about to end, and I think that's the end of the series. I think they said they were only going to do 2 seasons. But I kind of don't see it losing this category. So I do think it's going to be Arcane. Season 2 is going to be the winner. Next up, we have most anticipated. We have Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Ghost of Yotei, Grand Theft Auto 6, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and Monster Hunter Wilds. Last year's winner was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and there's really no contest here. There's just zero shot that Grand Theft Auto 6 loses, so you could pretty much lock that in right now. I wonder, I mean, there kind of are some snubs here. Doom to Dark Ages and Fable, I think, should be here. And I think this also is a reminder that I really wish that the Game Awards would increase nominations to 6 by default. So the way the Game Awards works is that if you have 6 titles, but you have 6... I think the only way that there are 6 nominees is if 2 of those nominations were tied. And that's the only way that there can be 6. But it's usually supposed to be 5 by default. I really think that the gaming industry has grown just enough for there to be 6 nominations per. And I think this is a great category that, in my opinion, should be a few things. Number one, it should be more than 5. You know, we have a lot of amazing games coming out next year. Fable, I think, was one that I think deserved to be here. I think that's really highly anticipated. Doom to Dark Ages is another one. Ghost of Yotei I thought was kind of interesting to be here just because it feels like it was just announced yesterday. But I think this would be one that would benefit from being extended a bit more, and it should have a higher fan weight. I think there are some categories I think should have a little bit more of a weight from fan voting. I think this is one that will benefit from that. Innovation in accessibility: Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Diablo 4, Dragon Age the Veilguard, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, and Star Wars Outlaws. Last year's winner was Forza Motorsport. Now, one thing to note here, this is the only nomination for Dragon Age the Veilguard, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it is the only nomination that they were able to get. I think part of that probably is just because the game came out so late. And I know that there are a lot of people that continue to say that this show needs to take place in January instead of December. And I think Kotaku actually recently wrote up an article. I don't remember what the title of the article was, but I remember kind of seeing it, and it was sort of talking about how the Game Awards should take place early next year. Let me see if I can find it, because I don't remember what the title of that. Oh, here it is. The Game Awards should happen after the year's over, like every other award show. So there's a reason why that doesn't happen. And it's going to kind of be a bit of a theme that I'm going to speak about throughout this segment, which is that it's something I've brought up before. There's a YouTube video that I published called, I think it's called The Game Awards Needs a Reset. And I started that video off by saying that the Game Awards is not an award show. And unfortunately, it just isn't. It doesn't matter how much Jeff Keighley tries to convince you and tell you that this is an award show. This is meant to honor developers and publishers. Unfortunately, it's just bullshit. We just kind of have to be honest with each other here. I think that there is a part of Jeff Keighley that does believe that, and I think he tries to sell it, but I think he oversells it. Because the truth of the matter is that the Game Awards is a commercial. It just is. It's an advertisement. And what better advertisement to push further holiday sales and the upcoming holiday season, Christmas Day, which is, Christmas Eve is the 24th of December, than to put together a giant commercial that's seen by millions and millions of people 2 weeks before Christmas. And that's really what this is about. It's really about pushing those sales even further right before Christmas happens, which is why the Game Awards always takes place before Christmas. So this time is December 12th. The earliest was December 1st in 2016. I have it pulled up in front of me. The last time it was December 12th was 2019. Last year was the 7th of December. So yeah, I mean, this is a commercial. That's the reason why. Even though it would make sense in the fairness of the Game Awards, which is something once again we're going to continue to talk about, it would make sense in the fairness of the Game Awards that this take place in January or February. The reason why it doesn't is you just have to look at the advisory board to know why it doesn't. It's just a great way to push further Hollywood sales because, once again, this is just a commercial. So, yeah, the winner here, I honestly don't know. But if I had to take a guess, I'm going to go ahead and guess Call of Duty Black Ops 6. If they have a lot of, I mean, to have enough innovation to make a first-person shooter accessible sounds pretty, that sounds pretty cool or sounds pretty noteworthy. So maybe Call of Duty or Diablo maybe might win here. Best multiplayer, we have Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Helldivers 2. Somehow, Super Mario Party Jamboree made its way in here. Tekken 8 and Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. Yeah, give me the magic wand. I'm definitely not putting Super Mario Party here. I think that should have been Power World without a doubt. Power World didn't even get a single nomination here, which I think is abhorrent. I just kind of don't understand how they didn't even get nominated for Best Multiplayer. We're talking about one of the biggest games that came out this year. It definitely was a game that many people were talking about. Many people continue to talk about. It just recently came out on PlayStation. Like, yeah, whatever. They have the Pokemon lawsuit. But this game was breaking records when it came out, and it was a really solid title. Whether you want to subscribe to the ideal of them, stealing or copying Nintendo's homework, at the end of the day, they still took a genre like survival and made it very accessible to a lot of people. And I think that's something that should be recognized and celebrated. So I think it's pretty lame that Power World was not nominated. Last year's winner was Baldur's Gate 3 for some reason. I don't think multiplayer comes to mind when you think of Baldur's Gate 3, but they won last year. Yeah, the winner here, without a doubt, should be Helldivers 2. I think this is a no-brainer. I don't think any other game here should even be thought about. I think Helldivers 2 should and hopefully will win. Best Sports / Racing, F124, EA Sports FC25, NBA 2K25, Top Spin 2K25, WWE 2K24. There's a very obvious snub here, and that is College Football 25. I have absolutely no idea how that was not nominated. And I think this speaks to something I've spoken about previously when it comes to the Game Awards, that for some specific awards, they need to carve out a smaller team of judges and not let the same pool of judges that sort of get these nominations for the rest of the categories also do specifically sports and racing. So they do that for innovation accessibility. There's a dedicated accessibility experts, people that are very well known within the disability community or disabled community, that they narrow down these nominations. That just makes the utmost sense. Same thing with esports. Esports has a dedicated judge pool. I think the same has to be done for best sports and racing. Because then you get huge misses like this one, which is like, I just don't understand how College Football 25 is not on here. It was one of the highest rated. Actually, their Metacritic is higher than some of these. I don't think it's all of them, but some of them it's definitely higher than WWE. But on top of that, it was the best-selling football title of all time. It's the second best-selling sports title in history. I think it's behind NBA 2K15, 16, something like that. And it's currently still the best-selling title of the entire year of 2024. The top three right now is College Football, Helldivers, and Call of Duty. It is very likely that after December, Call of Duty will leapfrog those two, but still, for a football game to be the best-selling title of this entire calendar year and then not be recognized at the Game Awards kind of doesn't make any sense. Madden's also not on here. Another game that I feel like I would have liked to have seen here was Undisputed, which was that boxing game. But I think definitely 100% WWE or Top Spin could have been knocked out here for college football. But from what we have here, I think the winner will be EA Sports FC 25. I just don't see how that loses. Best Sim Strategy, Age of Mythology Retold, Frostpunk 2, Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess, Manor Lords, Unicorn Overlord. This is another, last year's winner, was Pikmin 4. This is another section where I legitimately do not understand how this game is not on here, and that game is called Satisfactory. Now, this is a game that I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that maybe have not heard of it. I just heard of it a few months ago. I don't think it was really that long ago. But it is commercial, and I don't know if it's a commercial success, but it's a critical success. It has a very large following. A lot of people have been talking about this. When you look at it and you think about a strategy game, there's a reason why. You can clearly see why a lot of people like it. Definitely not for me. I looked at that game and I looked at a review and I was like, man, I don't think you could pay me to play that. Like, there's just no way I could ever play a game like that. But that game absolutely deserved to be here. If you remember from the Golden Joystick Awards that I talked about, it did win the best PC game of the year. I think it was the one that it had taken away. Yeah, I kind of don't understand how that was missed here. And yeah, I think that every year we usually see nominations that are just kind of like head scratchers. And it sort of makes me feel like maybe the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley and his team are a little bit too hands off. Where like this is one of those where I kind of go like, wait a minute, guys, how is this game not here? Like, how is Kunitsugami here? And no offense to Capcom, but that game came and went very, very quickly. And I think in terms of innovation, I think you could look at Satisfactory and see the innovation there that ensures that it should deserve a spot on this list. The winner here, man, I'm really not sure. I think it's between Manor Lords and Age of Mythology. I'm just going to go ahead and go with Manor Lords, and I kind of really hope it does. I believe that was developed by one person, or one person primarily. Best Family Game, a.k.a. the Nintendo Award. Nominees are Astrobot, Princess Peach Showtime, Super Mario Party Jamboree, Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and The Plucky Squire. Last year's winner was Super Mario Wonder. So Nintendo has won this category 8 out of the last 10 years. Every year I talk about the Game Awards, I always say the same thing. I really wish that this category did not exist. It does not make any sense. I don't even know how the Plucky Squire even got here. Was there really nothing else? No offense to Plucky Squire, but I don't really think it was that great. Neither was Princess Peach Showtime. But it kind of shows you that this kind of just this category doesn't make any sense to me. There's just no way that Astrobot loses this. So yeah, it's definitely going to be Astrobot. Best Fighting, we have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising, Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics, Multiverses, and Tekken 8. Last year's winner was Street Fighter 6. So this is another category that doesn't make any sense, or in terms of nominations doesn't make any sense. I truly don't understand how Multiverses got nominated again. And Multiverses was nominated in 2022, and it actually won the award in 2022. I think that was the same year that Sifu, for some weird reason, was nominated for Best Fighting Game. Now, before the Game Awards nominations were announced, in the frequently asked questions section of the website, they clarified that remakes, remasters, DLC, and expansions were eligible as long as the judgment group deemed that piece of content or that remake, that remaster was DLC, was good. It was so good that it deserves to be nominated at the Game Awards. That's sort of the only loophole that I could see being used to renominate Multiverses. But then that introduces that introduces way more questions than answers, because Multiverses won in 2022. In 2023, the game was shut down for like close to a year, and then it re-released earlier this year. Now, there are some differences between the version that they released now versus the first version of the game, like in terms of balancing and things like that. But the only reason why this will be nominated again is what? Because they added new characters. Does adding new characters now transform that game? And somehow the game got so much better that it deserves to be renominated. This is such a gigantic issue with this award show, this is why I love to hate this award show, because I think it's something where so many of us want this award show to be an actual award show, legitimate award show. And part of that legitimacy is fairness. But we are in direct competition with the Game Awards, with that advisory group that acknowledge that this is just an advertisement. This is just a giant commercial. And because of that, there's no need to put gates in place. Because if I'm running this show, the moment that the judges come back with their ballots and Multiverses is part of that top 5, I'm immediately going back to those judges and saying Multiverses is not eligible because not only was it nominated in 2022, but it also already won the award. There is no way anyone can convince me that adding a few characters and stages has transformed Multiverses so much that somehow it deserves to be nominated again. Because if that's the argument, then Street Fighter 6 should be nominated again this year because they added characters, they added stages. Same thing we could make the same argument with Mortal Kombat 1. Like, oh, they added all these cool cameo characters and stages, nominate them again. This is why I hate this award show, because it's almost like they set rules and then they almost don't follow their own rules, right? So I talked about that when Sifu was nominated for Best Fighting Game. When you read the description for that category, Sifu does not fit in there. But somehow, because there's hand-to-hand combat in that game, it was able to be nominated for Best Fighting Game. So it's almost like I don't even blame the judges. Because if the judges put forward these nominations, I don't even blame them. I blame Jeff Keighley and his team for not putting up that stopgap, that gate to say, no, you cannot make this game eligible again, because it clearly just doesn't make any sense. And part of me feels like maybe it was nominated because, once again, you don't have specifically FGC focused judges. And I think to them it's like, well, I gotta name something. So I guess I'll nominate Multiverses. And it's like, by the logic of what fighting game and that category means, you could have actually put Undisputed in here, which was that boxing game. It's still 1v1 fighting, right? That's kind of, it still fits under the umbrella on here. Rivals of Ether 2, I think, came out a few months ago, and that game actually has a higher player count on Steam than Multiverses does. Multiverses is drowning. No one likes that game. like there's just literally no reason for it to get nominated again here. The winner here, I think, is going to be Tekken 8. I think it actually definitely is the most. I think it deserves to be the winner here. But honestly, I could also see Dragon Ball winning this. I don't think Marvel's going to win, nor Granblue. Multiverses definitely should not win, and I don't think it will. But I'm going to give it to Tekken 8. Best RPG, we have Dragon's Dogma 2, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, and Metaphor ReFantasio. So, here's the first category where we have the very controversial pick of Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. Now, Shadow of the Erdtree was nominated in separate categories. It was also nominated in Game of the Year. So it very quickly began this debate from people talking about, should pieces of additional content like Shadow of the Erdtree be up for nominations again? And I think the general consensus, overwhelmingly, when you look at people online, it does feel like people do agree that no, it should not be eligible. There are other people that feel like, no, you know what? If it was that good, then it should be eligible to be nominated again. And I think, once again, it really speaks to what is the point of the show? What is the purpose of the show? And I think for me and a lot of people out there, it really should be about honoring and celebrating developers and publishers for that calendar year. And in the interest of fairness, when you have a game take up a slot once again, you are removing a potential spot for someone else. Because remember, you can only have 5 slots. 6 only happens if there's a tie. So because Elden Ring is there, that loses a spot for, Paper Mario that came out this year, which was a remake, which is supposed to be eligible, right? But if we throw that out, then you have a slot there for Dragon Age. But in my opinion, a lot of people felt that the slot that should have gone to would have been Persona 3 Reload. So the issue when you do that is, once again, you remove a slot from someone else. There's probably a bunch of other RPGs that could have gone here. I don't have I didn't brainstorm a list in front of me. Last year's winner was, of course, it was Baldur's Gate 3. But I think you remove a slot, right? So I had posted up a video on this, and I read a few of the comments on there, and there's some here that says, it was the best and most important game experience of 2024. It just means no real games even came close to a DLC of an older Game of the Year released this year. So there's a lot of the comments that are saying like, hey, you know what? It's worthy of a nomination because it was one of the best things that came out this year. And that's not the argument here. The argument, no one's arguing that the game isn't deserving of a nomination. That's not the argument. The argument is that if we allow it to be nominated, then you are taking a slot from another game that could have been here, that should have been here, that could have definitely benefited from a sales boost from being here. Lord knows Elden Ring doesn't need it, right? So to me, that's my personal reason why DLC shouldn't be nominated. The other problem is that it opens up issues, just like I talked about with multiverses, but it also brings up issues where theoretically now the biggest publishers in the world have almost like an abject motivation, and they have a very distinct advantage over smaller publishers and smaller developers, because now it's almost beneficial to the sales of your product to cut part of it out and put out a really chunky piece of downloadable content, because you know that when your game releases, if you're able to carve something out and put out a really big sizable content, a piece of content, within 2 years, you can now be nominated again. And your game can now get a massive sales boost once again. And if you don't think that the Game Awards influences sales, you're crazy. Balatro is now the #1 mobile game. It superseded Minecraft, which is crazy. It's the most downloaded paid game right now on the iOS App Store. That's a full-on benefit from it being nominated for Game of the Year. So these decisions absolutely do boost the sales of these video games. But think about it like this. What if From Software is working on another piece of content right now for Elden Ring? That means that Elden Ring would theoretically be nominated for a Game Award on 3 separate years. And I just don't think that makes sense in the fairness of it all. Another thing that I had brought up in that video that I put out is that think about any other industry doing this. If Oppenheimer re-released and they put an extra hour or two in theaters, does that mean that they should be nominated for Best Picture again? No, of course not, especially because they won, right? Elden Ring already won their award. Same thing with music. If someone wins Album of the Year and then they re-release the album with a few extra tracks, should they be nominated for Album of the Year again? No, they just objectively shouldn't. And I think, once again, the argument is not against the quality of the content. That's not what anyone is arguing against. I think the argument is more focused on the fairness here. And unfortunately, because this is a commercial, this will never be reversed. You guys can make as big of a stink as you want. And it, like I said, it does feel like the overall majority of people do believe that this is not in the best interest of the show. I don't foresee this changing because once again, is a commercial. When you look at the advisory board, it's all mega publishers and companies. So you have Doug Bowser, the head of Nintendo. You have Phil, the head of Xbox. The head of Sony isn't there, but Sony, the company, is there. Rockstar is there. Who else is in there? I think it's the head of AMD, Riot Games, Yves Guillemot from Ubisoft is on there. And I can't remember off the top of my head who else is on there. Kojima's on there. So when you look at this makeup, there's only one creator. The single developer that's on there is actually Kojima. Everyone else is really just running these mega gigantic corporations and companies. So it is in their best interest to ensure that this continues to happen, that content and is able to be eligible. And I think, like I've said before, that I think that remakes should be eligible. I think they should be eligible, but I think that there should be a limit to it. So the reason why I said that Resident Evil 4, I don't think was an issue with it being nominated for Game of the Year last year, is because that game is not the same game that came out over 15 years before. If you played the original, you didn't play the new one. If you played the new one, you didn't play the original. And I think the same could be said recently with Silent Hill 2. I think if you played the new one, you didn't play the original, and same thing, vice versa. But in my opinion, Horizon Zero Dawn that came out this year as a remaster, that should not be eligible because it's just a remaster. Look, there's a lot of things that could be said about this. I personally don't like it. I think that you are once again taking away a slot from a game like Persona 3 Reload that got 0 nominations, especially because this and maybe Sound and Music were probably going to be the only 2 categories that it would have been eligible in. I don't think it would have been eligible for Game of the Year. I think there were just way too many bigger titles that came out this year. But the existence of Shadow of the Erdtree here removes Persona 3 Reload being on there. And once again, the argument is not about which game is better, which game had a bigger impact on RPGs this year, or anything like that. I think once again, it's all about in the interest of fairness, in the interest of what's the point of this award show. I think a lot of people want it to be fair. I think a lot of people want to see more teams get celebrated and highlighted and acknowledged. And when you allow DLC on there, number one, you open up the door from abuse for bigger publishers, right? So imagine if Baldur's Gate was working on expansion, which they already announced that they weren't. But if they were working on expansion, theoretically, that expansion will release next year. So it'd almost be like, okay, 2 years in a row where we have 2 pieces of expansion content that are highly likely going to be nominated for Game of the Year. And once again, it's not about, like, I think one person put that in my YouTube comment, is like, oh, that means that if it was nominated, it means that all of your other games is really, really sucked in comparison. And I think that's kind of a BS argument to make, because, like I said, no one's arguing against the quality of Shadow of the Erdtree. It was one of the highest rated pieces of content that came out this year, but so was Animal Well, and it didn't get into Game of the Year, and part of that could be blamed on the fact that Shadow of the Erdtree was eligible. So, yeah, I personally don't agree with this. But who's going to be the winner? Now, this also, once again, throws a wrench into this, because I think that Metaphor ReFantazio should win here. But now, because of Shadow of the Erdtree, it sort of throws a wrench into this idea of, like, who do I think is going to win, or who I think should win. I really hope is Metaphor that wins here, even if Elden Ring is nominated, but that's tough. Like, I want ReFantazio to win, but I just don't see how it beats Shadow of the Erdtree. Best Action Adventure, we have Astrobot, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Silent Hill 2, Star Wars Outlaws, and Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. This is a hodgepodge type of group here. Last year's winner was Tears of the Kingdom. I think this is definitely between Astrobot and Silent Hill 2. I honestly don't even understand how Star Wars Outlaw got nominated here. I'm sure there had to be something else that could have been on here outside of Star Wars Outlaws. But yeah, here we are. Yeah, I think this is between Silent Hill 2 and Astrobot. I really don't see Astrobot losing this, though. Next, we have Best Action Game, Black Myth Wukong, Black Ops 6, Helldivers 2, Stellar Blade, and Warhammer 40,000. This is going to be a really tough one. I honestly don't know. You could knock out Warhammer and Call of Duty. I don't think it'll win any of those. I think it's between Helldivers, Black Myth, and Stellar Blade. Wow, I really don't know who would win this one. I'm going to give the slight edge to Helldivers 2 just because it was kind of wholly unique compared to the other two. Best VR AR, Arizona Sunshine Remake, Asgard's Wrath 2, Batman Arkham Shadow, Metal Hellslinger VR, Metro Awakening. Last year's winner was Resident Evil Village. I think this is between Batman and Asgard's Wrath 2, but I'm going to give a slight edge to Batman Arkham Shadow. Best Mobile, we have AFK Journey, Balatro, Pokemon Trading Card Game Pocket, Wuthering Waves, and Sunless Zone Zero. I think this is between Wuthering and Balatro. I'm going to give the slight edge to Balatro, though. Next up, we have Best Community Support, Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, Helldivers 2, No Man's Sky. Last year's winner was Baldur's Gate 3. I honestly don't know. I don't really keep up with these communities. No Man's Sky obviously is still putting out a lot of incredible content. I honestly think that they should win this year. But Helldivers 2, I don't know if they should win. I mean, they did respond to a lot of fan feedback, but you know, they had a lot of issues with the PSN account thing. I think it should be No Man's Sky, but I could honestly see Baldur's Gate 3 winning again. But I would like to see No Man's Sky win. Best Debut Indie, Animal Well, Balatro, Manor Lords, Pacific Drive, and The Plucky Squire. I don't know why Plucky Squire is here. No offense. That game was not really that good. I think this is between Animal Well, Balatro, and Manor Lords. I really would love to see Animal Well win. I mean, for what that game was, the fact that it was a single developer who did music and everything for that game, I really would love to see Animal Well win here. Yeah, I really hope it's Animal Well. Obviously, I could see Balatro winning, but I hope that Balatro does win both of these awards because it's also up for Best Independent. Indie Animal Well, Balatro, Lorelei, and Laser Eyes Neva UFO 50. Last year's winner was Sea of Stars. I think UFO 50 was pretty cool, but I think this is once again between Animal Well and Balatro. There's just zero shot that Balatro loses this. Best ongoing game, we have Destiny 2, Diablo 4, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, and Helldivers 2. Wow, this is a tough one. I think it's a really tough one. I think this might be between Diablo 4 and Helldivers 2. Damn. This is one of those that I genuinely don't know who's going to win this one. Okay, I'm going to take a guess. I think it's kind of a guess because I think it's between Helldivers and Diablo 4. I'm going to go with Helldivers 2. I think Helldivers 2 would win this one. Games for Impact, we have Closer the Distance, Indica, Neva, Life is Strange, Double Exposure, Senua Saga, Hellblade 2, Tales of Kenzera, Zao. I honestly have no idea on this one. Yeah, I really don't know. I'm just going to take a guess. I'll say Tales of Kenzera. I really don't know who will win this. Last year's winner was Chia. Best performance, we have Brianna White for Rebirth, Hana Tell, Life is Strange, Humberly Gonzalez, Star Wars Outlaws, Luke Roberts for Silent Hill 2, and Melina Jurgens for Senua Saga, Hellblade 2. I really think it's going to be Brianna White. I just don't see her losing this one. Best audio design, Astrobot, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, Senua Saga, Silent Hill 2. I think this should really be between I think Senua Saga, this is probably the one category where I think it absolutely deserves to be, because the audio design for that game is absolutely phenomenal. Astrobot absolutely does deserve to be here also. Wow, this is a tough one. I'm going to go with Senua Saga. I really think it should win here. Last year's winner was Hi-Fi Rush, so I'll be 2 in a row for Xbox if they do one. But I think this is between Senua and Astrobot. Best score in music, Astrobot, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor Refantasio, Silent Hill 2, and Stellar Blade. Last year's winner was Final Fantasy 14. 16. Yeah. Damn, this one, I honestly, once again, I don't know. My vote will be for Astrobot, especially because a bunch of these I haven't played yet. But damn, I really don't know. I'm going to guess Metaphor Refantasio is going to win. Best art direction, Astrobot, Black Myth, Wukong, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Metaphor Refantasio, Neva. I just do not. Sorry, last year's winner was Alan Wake 2. I do not see Shadow of the Erdtree losing here. Once again, man, just another category where I feel like Shadow of the Erdtree kind of takes up a slot that could have been for someone else. I really wish Harold Halibut was on here. I know that's a game that a lot of people probably don't know about, Harold Halibut, but it was in development for so long, and it's all made up of like felt sort of stop motion claymation sort of design. I think it's a phenomenal look for that game. I think it has such a unique look to it. I really wish it would have been nominated here for best art direction, but it wasn't. Given what we have here, I just don't see how Shadow of the Erdtree loses. But if it does, it would be a Metaphor. Best narrative, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Metaphor Refantasio, Senua Saga, Hellblade, and Silent Hill 2. I think this is Metaphor's category to lose here. I think it's probably going to be between Metaphor and Final Fantasy, but I think I'll give the slight edge to Metaphor. Last year's winner was Alan Wake 2. Best game direction, Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth, Wukong, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor Refantasio. I really think that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth should win this one. But once again, there's another category where Shadow of the Erdtree's presence sort of throws everything out of whack. For as much as Balatro has done this year, I don't see it losing to any of these other ones. I also don't see Astrobot beating these other ones for best game direction. I would like to see Final Fantasy VII Rebirth take this, but I kind of, once again, don't see Shadow of the Erdtree losing. Game of the Year. We have Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth, Wukong, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor Refantasio. Last year's winner was Baldur's Gate 3. This is one definitely that I genuinely don't know. Black Myth, you can knock that one out. There's no way it's going to win here. Its nomination, a lot of people were kind of like, what? I was not surprised. If you guys remember, I talked about this last week. I got 5 of these right. The only one that I got wrong was Shadow of the Erdtree, because I did say, like, man, even though it's eligible, I really hope that they didn't. And I had talked about that. I really wish that Animal Well had gotten that slot. But Black Myth, I definitely predicted that it would be here. The game just had too big of an impact to not be on here, especially since it came out very recently. There's a tough one. Black Myth, I think, doesn't stand a chance. I think Final Fantasy now, looking at these games, I think also probably doesn't stand a chance. Balatro, I don't think will win it. I think that this is between Metaphor, Elden Ring, and Astrobot. I genuinely don't see Shadow of the Erdtree losing, which is kind of crazy to think about. I think the upset here would be Astrobot. I think Astrobot definitely has a chance just because of what it was. I think it represented a game that a lot of people had been sort of missing. Very, very laid back type of classic video game fun for just the pure fun of it. And I think that gives it a little bit of an edge. but I genuinely don't see Shadow of the Erdtree losing. And I think that if it wins, once again, it sets an interesting precedent from a marketing standpoint as a publisher, where now I genuinely feel like if I have a Game of the Year worthy title on my hands, it is in almost like my best interest now to carve a piece of the game out and re-release it in 2 years and get a chance to be nominated and maybe win again to boost my sales even more. I think it sets up a weird sort of precedent if Shadow of the Erdtree would to go ahead and win. But I could absolutely see it happening given everything else that's on here. And I think outside of that, it would probably be Astrobot for the upset. And yeah, so that was the Game Awards nominations. Astrobot and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth led all nominations with 7 each. PlayStation led all publishers with 16 nominations. It continues their total. They are the most celebrated publisher in Game Awards history. This was Xbox's second best year with 12 nominations, and PlayStation has now had at least one Game of the Year nominee for 10 years in a row, which is pretty insane. You can pretty much lock them in at 11. There's no way that they won't get at least one nomination next year because they have Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yotei if it comes out next year, possible even Wolverine. Those really are all Game of the Year worthy titles. I mean, they're all going to lose to Grand Theft Auto 6 if it releases next year, let's be honest. But yeah, I kind of don't see how PlayStation doesn't extend that streak over to 11 years next year. The show is December 12th, I believe it is. That was what I said earlier. Yeah, I think, look, with this show, I've always had a very love-hate relationship with this show. I think that they do some things right. I think they do a lot of things wrong. But I think at the end of the day, it's important for everyone to remember that this isn't the Oscars of the video game industry, even though it's so huge in terms of viewership. This award show really is almost like the VMAs more so than anything. And I think that's one of the reasons why you won't really see changes that are made in the interest of fairness, because at the end of the day, this really is just the gaming industry's biggest commercial of the year. Like, if you take every other industry event throughout the year, Gamescom, whatever E3 is now, all those little individual directs, all that viewership combined still pales to the combined viewership of the Game Awards, especially because you have access to a global audience. So I just don't see a lot of these changes that we would like to see ever kind of going through. Hot releases of the week. We have November 26th, Nine Souls coming to PS4, PS5, Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series X. It is also coming day one to Game Pass. And Trombone Champ Unflattened, PC, PSVR 2, and Quest. And then November 28th, we have Raven's Watch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Time for us to wrap it up. These are stories that we didn't have time to get to. We got some new details regarding a Fable alpha build that was shared by Windows Central Jez Corden. He says it contains elements reminiscent of CD Projekt Red DNA. Playguard Games has hired several developers from CD Projekt Red, including a combat designer. The gameplay isn't an exact replica of The Witcher, but it features similar mechanics. The footage, according to him, looks super polished for an alpha build. It showcased various weapon types, including bows and arrows, spells, and melee weapons similar to those used by Geralt. The gameplay looked impressive, and the combat was very tight for an alpha build. I think this is, without a doubt, probably Xbox's most anticipated title for a very, very long time, because two things have combined with this game that I don't think Xbox has had for a while, which is, number one, you have a game that has a very large following and fan base, and it is a highly anticipated entry into that franchise. But then you combine it with these jaw-dropping visuals, which I think that Xbox games, a lot of them sort of miss that. Indiana Jones, I think, is a little bit of an outlier. I think that game visually looks very, very impressive. But Fable genuinely looks like something that we've never really seen kind of before. It does have this very, very high level of polish. So I think a lot of people are hoping that everything comes together, and it sort of feels that way. And to hear that it's looking pretty good and the combat is looking great. Hopefully they knock this one out the park. Xbox could use a win. Xbox has sort of, I look at it this way, which is that they've never really had a fully incubated Game of the Year nomination or Game of the Year nominee. When you look at the three that they've had, which is The Outer Worlds, Deathloop, and Psychonauts 2, especially with Deathloop and The Outer Worlds, it was a technicality, right? They technically owned those companies before the nomination was made. So that's why it sort of counts for Xbox, because they own the companies. But Psychonauts 2 will be the only one that they actually published, and which was, they were under Xbox's belt for like 2-3 years or something like that. But Fable, if it actually succeeds and it is looking like a Game of the Year worthy type of title, would kind of be the first one that will be almost 100% incubated underneath Xbox for them to be Game of the Year eligible. And when you look at that, the fact that it's rare to see an Xbox game nominated for Game of the Year, it just goes to show you the reason why Xbox is where they are. It's just because they are not a great publisher. Last week's Xbox added a long-promised feature, the ability to cloud stream your own games. The Game Pass Ultimate subscription is required, and 50 titles are currently supported. I'm curious to see how many people actually get use out of something like this, especially because you do need to now pay $20 a month in order to even access something like this. I mean, if you own a lot of games, are you also a Game Pass subscriber? I'm kind of curious as what the Venn diagram of that is. I think it's cool, but just 50 games. We'll see how long it takes for them to grow something like that. PlayStation Portal received an update that now allows PlayStation Plus premium subscribers to cloud stream up to around 120 games. This is pretty crazy. This means that now you can buy a Portal, which is around what's Portal right now, $200 or something like that, and pay that monthly fee and be able to stream games without actually having to own a PlayStation 5. That's pretty big. I'm curious if PlayStation is going to start to market this thing as more of an accessory and sort of market in a way of just like, hey, this is almost like a $200 game machine for the holidays. Obviously it dropping before December is really key for them. But I'm curious if they'll actually start advertising it that way, where it's like PlayStation Portal for, this much a month, you'll be able to stream all these games without owning a PlayStation 5. And I think, honestly, they should package PlayStation Portal with a free month, for the holidays. I think it would be pretty key. And finally, in its Capital Markets Day 2024 presentation, Remedy announced Alan Wake 2 has sold over 1.8 million units, and around 40% of players have completed the game. They also announced that Control has sold over 4.5 million units worldwide and has surpassed 19 million players. They also confirmed that Control 2 will be an action RPG. Alan Wake 2 needs to release on Steam. I don't know how long this Epic exclusivity was, but it's been over a year since Alan Wake 2 released. It's still not out on Steam. It just needs Steam. This game is too good to just have sold 1.8 million units, and I don't think it's reached profitability just yet. I think it just shows the difficulty of that genre of survival horror. But yeah, this game is too good to not be on Steam. That definitely needs to get over there. Shout out of the week. First one goes to Square Enix. In 1 week, Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake sold 826,000 copies in Japan alone, becoming Japan's best-selling game of the year. And also shout out to GSC Game Science. Stalker 2 sold over 1 million copies in about 2 days, which is phenomenal because the reviews were rough because it looks like a lot of reviewers were given access to a game before a very important patch was released. So the game was kind of very broken when they reviewed it. But yeah, for it to still sell over 1 million copies, pretty phenomenal, especially given everything that team had to go through to deliver it. Make sure to subscribe to Camp Koji on your favorite podcast platforms so you can listen to it on the go. If you already are, please leave us a review. It helps out more than you know it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Please follow us. And once again, I am Joel, and I will see you all next week.